Let's get down to it today. I want to talk about storage. I feel like storage is one of those kind of icky topics that we all try to kind of avoid. You don't tend to talk about storage with your friends and family. It's this private thing that we all deal with. It's often hidden away, and it maybe reflects years of avoiding decluttering or organizing. And it might also be wrapped up in our past or memories or belongings from a different part of your life. At least personally, when I think about storage, I'm just like, ugh, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to deal with that. It's annoying, it's heavy, it's clunky, and it's something I don't want other people knowing about. Especially now that I have this YouTube channel about decluttering and minimalism, I feel weird that I do have stuff in storage in my basement. I also realize that a lot of us don't have a lot of storage, and so for some of us we have to be smart and thrifty with the space that we have. But I still think a lot of these concepts can be applied to even tiny storage spaces like underneath the bed or a back closet. With how many belongings the average American have, which according to the LA Times is 300,000, realistically, most people do have a fair amount of stuff in storage. So if you do only have tiny storage areas, good for you, because that means you probably have fewer belongings than most people. Over the past number of months, I've started thinking about storage a little bit differently. I'm actually using storage better now. I'm not all the way to where I want to be, but I think if we think about storage a bit differently and use specific strategies to keep it a little more streamlined, a little more simplified, it can make life a lot easier, and it doesn't have to feel like this big burden, this big thing you want to hide. It's just something you got to deal with. So today I want to talk about 8 ways you can look at storage differently. If you think of storage as a place where you just put things and they stay forever, then they will stay there forever. But if you see storage instead as the space that's constantly changing, you're constantly moving things around, you're taking things in and out, you're actually using the belongings that are in your storage space, you might actually feel a little better about your storage and be making better use of that space. So the first strategy to think about storage differently is to take the shame out of it. Just say no more shame to yourself. No more shame. I don't want to have to feel guilty and bad about the fact that I have any storage. I feel like when I'm ashamed of something, I avoid it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to spend my time just coping with the stuff that's in my storage because it's associated with all this bad feeling. But I feel like if I just tell myself a lot of people have storage and a lot of people actually have a lot more storage than I do, and you can say that even if you have a lot of storage, I think it just relieves this bit of tension and this load, and then you're able to see things a little bit more objectively. You're able to approach your storage and do something about it rather than just feeling like, I don't want to deal with that. And I think that if we change our attitude, change our mindset around storage and see it as an opportunity, a tool we can use for things that are in transition, it can feel empowering and you can take more control of your storage and not just avoid it. A second way to think about storage differently is to declutter and reduce so that there's just fewer belongings in your storage area. If you just take a day to go through and get rid of what you can, you'll already see a big difference. One day can make a massive impact. And if you just take a Saturday and just say, today, I'm going to focus on minimizing the storage and just declutter. And as a result, the storage space can suddenly start to feel like a more friendly place to you. Especially if there are things that have just been sitting there for a long time that you haven't touched, you haven't moved, and you know you're not going to use. Maybe it's time to let those things go, because realistically, storage shouldn't be a place that you just keep things forever for the sake of memories or for the sake of just having those pieces. Storage should be a space where you put things when they're not currently in use, but they should be things that you will use. Things like maybe out of season decorations or your skis that you're not going to use in the summertime, out of season clothing, or items that just you're not as excited about, but you know you're going to come around to using again. Give yourself permission to let go of the stuff that's just there because it's there. A third strategy is related, but it's to regularly go through the stuff in your storage area. Sometimes if I haven't been in the storage space forever, I don't even know what's down there. I forget I even have the belongings, and then I'm never going to use them. But if I regularly visit and remind myself, oh, I have this and that, It might even spur me on to do something creative or to use the equipment or whatever it is that's down there that I just haven't gotten around to using. A fourth strategy is to either label things really well, like if you're using cardboard boxes, make it very clear what's inside, or use clear bins or bags so that you can see what's inside. If you have a bunch of bins or boxes where you don't even know what's inside of them, then that storage space becomes even more of a headache and overwhelming. And even when you do want to find something that's in storage, you're like, I don't know what box it's in. I guess I'll just go to Target and buy it again. Just labeling things really well, grouping things together that make sense to be together, just basic organization can go such a long way. You can even make a list on your computer in like an Excel document of what's down in the basement or in your storage area. That way, if you're looking for something, you can look it up and know where it is. A fifth one, which I think is super helpful, is to keep your storage space well lit and clean. I realize sometimes storage spaces are kind of ugly or gross. They're not places you want to be. But if there are a bunch of cobwebs, or if it's just dirty, or if it's really dark, it's less pleasant to go there and you'll just keep on avoiding it. So I think sometimes moving everything to the side, deeply sweeping it, making sure that you have a good light fixture so that you can see what's in there can make that space so much more approachable, so much more pleasant to be in. And that way you are going to go back in more regularly and use the space. A sixth strategy is to store things categorically and accessibly. And I kind of touched on the categorical part before, but also there's that accessibility part that for the things that you're going to be using way more often, make sure those are near the front, near the entrance to your storage space. Also, think about different storage areas around your home. Like for me, I have this little attic space where I keep out of season clothes rather than bringing those pieces all the way to the basement. That way, it's just easier when I have to switch over in the spring or summer. That way, I'm more willing to put items in storage so that I can keep my closet more clear. Basically, if you can keep some of your storage more accessible and you can use it almost as a space where you're going back and forth and actively pulling things from, it's going to keep your home more streamlined in general. A seventh strategy is to have a specific drop zone for things that you're decluttering. So often I've noticed I will decide, okay, I'm going to declutter this thing, but I don't know where to put it. So I'll just kind of like set it to the side in that room and decide, oh, I'll pick that up later and declutter it. But then I don't get around to it right away. And then finally, when I'm getting to the point where I want to get rid of it or donate it, I have to go around my house and re-find all those items that I've just put to the side to declutter. If instead you have a given drop zone for the things you want to declutter, then it's easier to take those things and eliminate them from your space. And that's one way you can actually use storage. Use it as a drop zone for clutter that you want to eliminate from your home. An eighth strategy to think about storage differently is to not avoid the pieces that you're storing for other people. Realistically, if you have a little bit of storage space, quite often you will have family members who will lean on you a little bit and say, hey, can you store this for me? There have been many times when my parents have stored things for me for years, and I appreciate them for that. And they probably still have some of my belongings, so I gotta probably talk to them about that. Thanks, Mom and Dad. It just can become overwhelming and really add to the chaos that is your storage space. So I think it's just helpful to check in with those people every so often if you are storing something for them, and just make sure what the status of the item is, remind them about it, because they might even forget that you're storing it for them. And maybe they're like, oh, I don't need that. I don't even want that. But realistically, there are probably lots of times where there are miscommunications or misunderstandings about what to do with items. Greater communication around this stuff can be really helpful, because sometimes I think we're afraid to talk about it because we don't want to ruffle feathers or make someone feel bad that we're storing something for them. But realistically, you just got to talk about it. And again, it comes back to that theme of avoiding storage and just letting it sit there, as opposed to leaning in, approaching it, going through it regularly, seeing it as a transition space rather than a permanent space, and being happy and grateful for your storage rather than just seeing it as a black hole. I really want this video to be empowering because, quite honestly, like I said, storage has historically been kind of a cringy area of life for me. I haven't managed it well historically, and it's just been a headache. And I want to reclaim storage. I want to say, hey, this is a useful, helpful tool for streamlining the visual areas of my home, the spaces where I really do spend time. So I want to make sure that I'm using that storage space in a smart way, in a way that actually helps improve my quality of life as opposed to making it harder. If you enjoyed this video, I would so appreciate it if you would give it the thumbs up button. That's a great way to support the channel. And if you want to see more videos on simple living, minimalism, and building an empowering mindset, then hit the subscribe button below. That's pretty much all I've got for you today, but thank you so much for spending this little bit of time with me, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!